welcome back, everyone. Updating our top story tonight, troops are again on the move in the West Bank. This time, they're said to be on their way out of two major cities in the West Bank, Nablus and Ramallah. The extent of the pullout will not be evident until daylight, however. Israeli military officials say it could take days for them to leave parts of Ramallah. There is one area that they are not leaving, Yasser Arafat's compound. The withdrawal from Nablus, however, could take only a day. Now, the Israelis say that rounding up terrorists was the reason that they launched their military operation in the first place, but oftentimes the innocent and the helpless are the ones who get caught in the middle. CNN chief international correspondent Christiane Amanpour traveled to Nablus for One Family Story.
For the past 3 weeks, the Israeli army has been trying to rout Palestinian militants from the city of Nablus, trying to put a dent in the local terrorist network. The Israelis call Nablus a terrorist supercenter. For instance, they took out this soap factory because they said it was used to build explosives. But the trouble with this overarching war on terrorism is that everyone is a suspect. No one is immune, sometimes with devastating consequences. This is the story of Sirine and Nasser Ishtaye and their 5-day-old baby girl, Donya, in the village of Salem, 3 miles from Nablus. Born at home because of the difficulty getting through Israeli army roadblocks, Donya developed breathing troubles by Thursday night. She needed oxygen fast. At 8 p.m. we noticed the baby was sick, says Nasser. We called for a doctor and he said she needs to go to the hospital. I called the Red Cross and the Israeli military liaison officer. And I said, I beg you to help. My kid is about to die. He said, give me 10 minutes. And so they waited. It's normally a 7-minute drive to the hospital. Nasser is a Palestinian photographer who covers the West Bank for the American news agency, the Associated Press. He has Israeli press credentials and permits to travel through checkpoints. Of all people, he thought he would be able to cut through the red tape. But despite promises of help from the Israeli authorities, it took 2 hours for the ambulance to reach them through the Israeli checkpoints.
We took her in the ambulance. It was also tanks at in the beginning of Nablus. We want to enter these tanks. They stopped us and they shoot fire on us.
The soldiers made me and my wife get out, says Nasser. We said we had a small baby in very critical condition. They said, you may be carrying explosives in the ambulance. I said, I'm a journalist. I've coordinated this. I need to pass to save my baby. The soldier said, I know my job. And so they were searched again. The army says this is policy. 3 hours after the first phone call, this was the final checkpoint, just minutes from the hospital.
When we stopped near the tanks, it's only 5 minutes to get to the hospital. So we stopped half an hour. Then she died in ambulance, told us the nurse in the ambulance. And when we get there to the hospital, she has died.
This is the couple's second tragedy. Sirine had a miscarriage 15 months ago when she was told, mistakenly, that Nasser had been killed covering the Intifada. This time she had stopped her language studies at university to ensure a healthy pregnancy. The Israeli army says it regrets the death of her baby. Christiane Amanpour, CNN, near Nablus.
The bloody Mideast dispute is rooted in a long-running history which swings from hopeful talks of peace to all-out war. Here now to discuss this turbulent past and the current crisis is Edmund Gharib. He's a professor at the American University, also a specialist on Arab media, and he's joining us tonight from Washington. Sir, thank you so much for being with us. A tragic story that Christiane just brought to us of the family in Nablus. And with the withdrawals today, I would like to get your reaction on, has more harm been done that will be in the memories of those who are there to make this peace process, far away, much further than it was even before this?
I think this is what the picture and the story that we just heard tells a great deal about what we have seen, about the horrors of war, about when you have failure of negotiations, you're ultimately going to lead to violence, frustration, anger, and increased hostilities. It seems that both sides are going to be condemned for constant violence, constant war, constant conflict, unless they are able to reach an agreement, unless they are able to reach a settlement. And from what you just said, I think it seemed very important that if we try to assess this recent incursion by the Israelis into the Palestinian territories, well, what has it accomplished? Has it accomplished anything? It doesn't seem to have accomplished a great deal. I mean, the purpose, as Prime Minister Sharon said, was to root out the terrorist infrastructure. Instead, we're seeing, as even someone like who's a very close friend of Israel, like William Buckley, described as an act of wanton destruction. We are seeing, in fact, that Israel has not solved any problems. It has estranged itself from the rest of the world, and it has increased Palestinian hostility and Palestinian anger. This is very unfortunate, I think, for both sides, for both peoples. What's needed is reconciliation. What's needed is a peaceful solution. What's needed is negotiations based on the agreements that already on UN resolutions.
Well, first let me say that the Israeli government would certainly respond to you by saying that they have thwarted a number of suicide bombings with this incursion. So they would probably disagree with you. But, you know, given the past history of the region, you know, what can be done at this point to bring them back to the bargaining table, to bring both sides back to the bargaining table and see a peace process? At Camp David, they were very close. The Israeli government made more concessions than they ever had before, and still there was no peace process.
You know, unfortunately, on one level, we hear this a great deal from many people in the media and from the Israeli government about Israeli concessions and how generous the offer that the Israelis made.
No, I didn't say generous. I just said that there were more concessions.
I'm not saying that you said that. I'm saying this is what we've been hearing. This is one of the myths that we often hear.
Right.
Now, if you take a look at it, what is it really a concession, or should it be a compliance? There are UN resolutions, Resolution 242, Resolution 338, which demand that Israel comply with these resolutions and basically reach an agreement with the Palestinians based on land for peace formula. And recently, well, I think the interesting thing, what you just pointed out, the need for a new way to try to reach understanding. There's been a great deal of suffering, there's been a great deal of violence, there's been a great deal of bitterness on both sides. And unless both sides try to reach a new reconciliation, and we have a new formula out there, the Arab League has accepted something that's based on the Saudi offer, the Saudi proposition, that says basically that there should be a new agreement based, a new Palestinian state that would emerge out of the negotiations and land for peace formula. I think this is an important direction, an important area, and President Bush has already agreed to this idea and supported it. And I think perhaps this would be one of the best ways to try to get the two sides to meet together and to begin to negotiate with something that's going to be clear. I mean, one of the problems that has led to the failure so far is that the Palestinians have entered into negotiations that appear to be going on and on ad infinitum, and we should see that Israel deserves to get security. In return, the Palestinians should have a state of their own based on resolutions 242, 338, and the return to the boundaries of 1967, June 1967.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Edmund Greeb.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your insight into this. Thank you. Stay with us, everyone. Much more ahead, including Denver police. They're issuing an international alert following the disappearance of thousands of sensitive documents. Ahead, we'll have details and show you how such thefts could be a problem for you.
We understand. Dreams do not come with price tags. And home improvements improve more than just homes. We're Household, and we understand the hopes and financial needs of 50 million everyday people. That's why for nearly 125 years, we've specialized in loans, credit, and understanding. Household, helping everyday people every day.
Now is the best time to join America Online.
AOL is very easy to use.
Anyone can do it.
You've got mail.
I love AOL email.
Click and send. Everybody I know is on AOL.
I do feel good knowing that AOL has parental controls.
And if you want high-speed service, America Online has it for you. AOL makes broadband easy.
Being on the phone and AOL all at the same time.
With the broadband, everything is so much faster.
It's the best thing we ever did.
Welcome.
AOL keeps getting better and better.
America Online, so easy to use, no wonder it's #1. Call 1-800-4ONLINE.
CNN Monday on the all-new Crossfire. It's the left versus the right live. Will anything really come out of the Cardinal meeting at the Vatican? The Catholic controversy in the Crossfire. 7 Eastern on CNN Monday night.
Colorado authorities are issuing an international alert over the disappearance of thousands of blank identification documents officials fear could be used to create fake identities. Now, Denver police say 2,000 birth certificates and more than 300 death certificates were stolen last week from the city's Vital Records office. Police have asked the FBI, Interpol, and other agencies to be on the lookout. Authorities say they are afraid that the documents could be used to falsely obtain passports, driver's licenses, or other forms of identification. Now, it doesn't always take just a blank birth certificate for a criminal to falsify identification. In fact, experts say that in today's computer-savvy world, identity theft is becoming all too common and sometimes all too easy. Now, before you start thinking that it could never happen to you, listen to this. In the past year, some 300,000 people have filed claims with the Federal Trade Commission alleging that they have been victims of identity theft. Amazing numbers out there. And earlier tonight, I spoke with Ann Brown. She's chairwoman of the consumer safety organization known as Safer America for Everyone, and we discussed the growing prevalence of identity theft and what consumers can do to protect themselves. Thank you so much for being with us, Ann. You know, we hear so much about identity theft today. I'm wondering, is it because it's becoming increasingly popular, or are people just discovering that it's such a problem?
Well, identity theft is a big problem, and the Federal Trade Commission in Washington, D.C. has had 300,000 requests for affidavits for people who feel that they have identity theft.
Explain exactly what it is for people out there.
Identity theft is when a thief steals your personal information, your social security number or a credit card number, and uses it for fraud or theft. And it's a terrible situation. It can ruin your credit rating. It's aggravating, annoying. You feel like someone's been walking on your grave.
You know, how do you find out whether or not you're a victim of identity theft? Because you could be and not know right off.
Well, you know, people ought to really check their credit ratings with their credit bureaus once in a while. But unfortunately, the way people usually find out is somebody takes, in 40% of the cases, somebody steals your credit card, or they do get your name and your social security number. They make a credit card in your name, and when you start getting exorbitant bills, you know that there's a problem.
You know, it doesn't take a lot of information, as you just said. Credit card, social security number, maybe an address, that's about all they need.
You know, any thief with a laptop and a modem can be a real con person these days. And credit card and the identity theft is #1 on the list of the Federal Trade Commission fraud, higher than anything else, even things like sweepstakes.
It makes you want to rip up your credit card when you read these stories, when you hear these stories. You know, what can you really do to protect yourself?
First of all, you can be very careful with your personal information. Absolutely, terribly careful. Don't give it out. Don't carry your social
security. Wait a minute. When you say don't give it out, what do you mean? Don't give it out over the phone?
Be careful when you give it out. Make sure that you give it out to companies that you know. Somebody who just has a website or a Dropbox, that won't play. That's not good enough. You have to know the companies. Don't carry your social security card around in your wallet. Memorize your social security number. And don't do what I did. I was in a telephone booth in, you know, where they're lined up in the airport, and somebody did what they call shoulder surfing. He listened over my shoulder for my credit card and my telephone, and I had bills as internationally.
You know, Ann, if you can be a victim, I mean, you're a former chairman with the Consumer Product Safety Commission, you're with Safer America for Everyone. Anybody could be a victim, because I know you're careful about what you do.
Well, I'm a lot more careful now, I'll tell you, and that's what's important. But there are some new things that are happening to protect the consumer.
Tell me some of those.
Well, first of all, if you think you're a victim of ID theft, the first thing you should do, of course, is call the police and call your credit card company. But the other thing is contact the Federal Trade Commission. They now have something called an affidavit. And if, in fact, you have been a victim of this awful crime, they will give you one sheet and help you fill it out, one affidavit that'll go around to credit card companies, to the credit bureaus, to all kinds of places, so that you aren't just using this and spending all of your time. It consolidates it in one form that you have to fill out, and the FTC will help you fill it out as well.
And how does this usually turn out? Does the victim usually end up having to pay? What happened to you in your case?
Well, in my case, we were able to settle it so that he didn't have to pay. The thing is that you have to keep all of your documentation so you can show that these bills that appeared were really not by you, they were with somebody else. And interestingly enough, this doesn't just happen to senior citizens. In 21% of the cases, these are people that you know, perhaps a family member or a significant other. And they take place mostly in big cities right now, Chicago, LA, New York, Houston, Miami. But it is something that we all need to be aware of.
I want to ask one final question, because I think a lot of people, after they've heard this conversation, want to know, should you put your credit card number on the internet when you're buying something, or give it over a telephone? I mean, are we becoming paranoid? Why have a credit card if you're not able to use it?
Well, you are able to use it if you use caution and good common sense. Do you know the company? Have you dealt with them before? Are you giving it to a reliable company? That's how you can really be assured. Don't give it to people over the phone that you don't know. Don't give it to people who are just calling you and the deal sounds like a good one. Make sure that it's a reliable company that has more than just a website or a Dropbox. If you use common sense, you can be somewhat protected, and you have to be aware. Believe me, the shoulder surfing incident that I had has made me very aware.
Well, now you've made everyone else aware. Ann Brown, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Glad to be here.
And as we have heard, identity theft is a nightmare that can happen to anyone. And in fact, it did happen to a friend of mine and a very familiar face here at CNN, meteorologist Orlin Sidney. She's joining us now with her own story. Orlin, you're on television. You would think people would know.
You would think that it wouldn't be a good thing to do, which may mean something in and of itself. But I wish they would steal my identity when I have to be here at like 3 in the morning. That would be a good deal.
They'd be you for that time, right?
They could be me as long as they wanted to be.
Now tell us how you discovered this. It's actually reading your bank statement, right?
Right. Actually, I was upstairs after the show, and I was doing my bank statement, and I noticed all these checks coming through for $1,000 and $600 and $900. I never write checks that big.
Right.
And so I immediately called the bank because they have a 24-hour hotline. I called them and said, look, these checks that are going through, these are not mine. And we started comparing the numbers, and I actually still had those numbers in my checkbook. In other words, these checks were coming through, and I'm sitting here looking at the checks, myself.
Right.
What actually happened was that I had ordered a box of checks in December that I never got. Then the company sent out a second box of checks that I did get. The first box of checks, someone else got them, and they were using them just right up all over the Southeast.
Was the box of checks stolen out of your home mailbox, or?
I don't think so, because my mail doesn't come to my house. That's what I've been told by the investigators, is that sometimes these folks will actually drive through the neighborhoods, nice neighborhoods, and they'll open up the mailboxes and just take the mail out. And so they take, your checks and your credit cards, things like that. In my particular case, we think that the mail was actually stolen in the mail, which is, of course, a federal offense, just doing that. So.
But it didn't stop there, though.
Didn't stop there.
She then got herself some new credit cards.
That's right. She went to several locations. I started getting these bills in the mail for $2,000 here, and then usually when we would get the checks or we'd get the statements, it would be for the maximum amount. So if you opened up something for $2,000, immediately
she'd spend $2,000
would get spent because she didn't think she could go back again.
How did, what happened? What did you do? What was the first thing you did?
The first thing you do is cry when something like this happens.
Right.
And what happens, of course, the merchants have no idea that that's not me. They think that's me writing all these hot checks. So, of course, you start getting collection letters, you get all this on your credit report that you're slow paying, and you have to go through a process filing a police report.
Because
you have to, because it's a crime against you, and you
it's
have to
not
have
the
some
bank's
proof.
responsibility.
It's not the bank's responsibility. It's really not even your responsibility, because what happens with those checks is after your bank discovers that they're false, they start just sending them back like bounced checks. So then it's up to the merchant to decide if they want to pursue the matter. Of course, first thing they're going to do is they're going to write Orland Sidney and say, "Where's our money?"
Right.
So I had a stack, actually like a stack of 7 or 8 different sheets that I would just take the collection letter, stick them all together, staple them, and get it notarized and mail them out.
How stressful.
So far for me it's been an inconvenience, but it can certainly be bad.
So
for
it hasn't
people.
cost you anything.
Hasn't cost me
monetary.
anything money-wise,
Just
except for
sanity.
Yeah,
as
except for things like postage and that sort of thing. But I mean, this could really be bad. I'm very diligent. I check my credit report. I'm very careful about my credit cards and my checking accounts.
Yeah, I was going to ask you your advice and how, if you have changed the way you do anything now that this has happened to you.
Well, one of the things that I was told by the bank is not to ever have your checks sent to your home. Always have them sent to the bank. In that case, it would protect you if somebody's trying to get into your personal mailbox. But in my case, it wouldn't have made a difference because apparently they were stealing them en route.
Right.
Another thing that you want to make sure to do is to check your bank statement. I mean, so many times we just put them away and think, I'll get to it later.
And your credit report, because that really helps you find out about the credit cards, right?
For me, that helped because I just bought a house last year. So I was already checking my credit report anyway. And when this came through, then I immediately got more copies. In fact, I think in most states, if you're a victim of identity theft, you can get a free credit report.
Wow.
So you go back and check that, and then
you're going to have to keep doing this, aren't you?
For quite some time. It'll be probably 2 years before it's all cleared up.
I was going to ask you real quickly, we've run out of time, but do they have a suspect in your case?
They do. Police called me about 3 weeks ago and said they had a suspect, and we will see.
All you merchants out there, this is the real Orland Sidney.
And I don't write $1,000 checks either.
All right, Orland, I know, to change topics here, but you're following some tornadoes tonight. You'll be back with us a little bit and give us an update on that.
A little bit of severe weather going on the plains, and take a look at that, I think, a little bit, maybe 20 minutes or so.
Okay, the real Orland Sidney will be back with us in a minute. Stay with us, everyone.
Works of art belong in a museum. The award-winning Audi TT.
A respected newsman with a different way of looking at the story. Join Aaron Brown for Newsnight every weeknight at 10 Eastern. You can depend on CNN.
When life's twists and turns have you spinning out of control.
Mom, I'm going to be late.
Turn your music down, please.
What?
Here we go again.
Where's my backpack?
Right where she left it, of course.
Take the plunge, because life
just got better, thanks to my Oregon Hot Spring Spa.
Oregon Hot Spring Spas. Share the experience.
It's wild and crazy at the World of Poulsbo RV. We're smashing the competition with diesel luxury coaches starting at just $115,863. Beaver coaches starting at just $139,988. And Bounder motorhomes starting at just $66,948. Plus, we've got travel trailers starting at just $98,99. It's not too late for you to save. Remember, we'll take anything in trade, paid for or not. Welcome to the World of Poulsbo RV, home of the $1,000 price guarantee. We've been expecting you.
Have a real adventure. Discover the lands explored by Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery 200 years ago. This summer, pack up the family and follow the trail. Join with the Sierra Club in celebrating our wild and scenic lands, mountains, prairies, and mighty rivers. See what Lewis and Clark saw, places you will love, places you will want to protect. Begin your journey with a free map at sierraclub.org.
AT&T Broadband.
Pay-per-view.
You're gonna be bad for business, I can tell.
See Nicole Kidman's award-winning performance in the critically acclaimed Moulin Rouge on in-demand pay-per-view.
This is CNN. This is CNN.
And now it's time to take a look at a few stories that you may not have heard about this week. And we start with an update on an item that we first told you about 2 weeks ago. It is a story about a Kansas pharmacist who drew blood from 16 women for a bogus study. And for 6 years, Corey Pinner mailed the samples to fake addresses or threw them in his trash. We still don't know why he did it, but the county attorney has his own theory. He believes that Pinner had a sort of arm fetish. Yesterday, the court sentenced the 29-year-old pharmacist to 2 years probation for misdemeanor battery. Protests today in Boston over controversial T-shirts from retailer Abercrombie & Fitch. Now, the company's pulled the shirts from its clothing line after complaints from Chinese Americans that the designs are racially insensitive. One shows Chinese laundry workers with the phrase, "Wong Brothers Laundry Service. 2 Wongs can make it white." The retailers issued a statement saying that it never intended to offend anyone. And today, spectators at a California air show suddenly became eyewitnesses to an incredible tragedy. The 2 crew members on board that Navy F-4 Phantom were killed. It was flying with 3 other planes at the time. No one on the ground was injured. Authorities in Washington have confirmed that Lane Staley, he's the former lead singer for the rock band Alice in Chains, is dead. Police found his body in a Seattle apartment last night. Coroners haven't yet determined a cause of death, but police say there were no signs of foul play. Now, the band Alice in Chains was formed in Seattle and rose to prominence in the midst of grunge rock's popularity in the early 1990s. Lane Staley was just 34 years old. Many New York Yankee fans are crying foul because they will not be able to watch televised games of their favorite team in action this season. And CNN's Keith Elberman gives us his take on the controversy.
This was merely a provincial dispute about whether or not some people could see this. The New York Yankees started their own cable television network this year. It will broadcast all but about 24 of the team's games. Problem is, half of metropolitan New York does not get this new network. The dispute about that is in part about money and in part about revenge. The cable network the Yankees used to be on is owned by the company that owns about half the household cable systems in the area. In the immediate vicinity of Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, you cannot watch the Yankees while they play in the Bronx. A big issue here, not a big issue anywhere else, until now. The Yankees office has fielded literally hundreds of phone calls from disgruntled, angry, and even threatening fans who are not getting to see the new network. But one threat hit home. The caller said she was housebound, elderly, poor, and could not leave her apartment to come see the Yankees in person. All that she had to live for was to watch the Yankees games on cable. She telephoned the Yanks twice, and the second time, says the Yankees employee who took both of the calls, the woman said, "This is my name. Look for it in the newspapers tomorrow because I'm going to kill myself." The Yankees looked. Nothing. Not yet. Writing about the epic 1975 Baseball World Series, the great writer Roger Angell observed that there was nothing more illogical than an emotional investment in something as crassly commercial as a professional sports franchise. But, he concluded, sports isn't about caring for something commercial, it's about caring for something. The suicidal caller could have been making it up. People do that. They threaten when they have no desire to end their own lives. But to even make that phone call and make that statement reminds us not to forget that this matters to people. Keith Olbermann, CNN, New York.
Up ahead, it may be commonplace in Southern California, but a rare event shakes upstate New York, Cleveland, and Baltimore. We'll have much more on that when we return.
I've always had the will to win. It's what drives me to do more. And when it comes to your health, you can do more. A medicine called Altace can help. I take it for high blood pressure, but it may also help you in a different, important way. If you're 55 or older and have had a heart attack or stroke or have diabetes, plus another risk factor, you can do more.
When added to existing medications, Altace was clinically proven to further reduce the risk of stroke, heart attack, and cardiovascular death. Prescription Altace is not for everyone. Altace may cause swelling of the mouth, tongue, or throat, which could cause extremely serious risk and requires immediate medical care. Common side effects include persistent dry cough, dizziness, and lightheadedness due to low blood pressure. Do not take Altace during pregnancy, as death or injury to your unborn child may result, or if you've experienced serious side effects related to previous ACE inhibitors.
You can do more. Go ahead. Ask your doctor about Altace.
Anything in the mail?
Junk.
Hey, look at this.
What?
A credit card pre-approved. You know what that means.
We already have a credit card.
But it's pre-approved. What do you want? A trip to Bermuda?
The Caymans?
Yeah. Or a nice dinner around?
You know what I want? A house.
Using credit wisely is the first step toward owning a home. Call for the free guide on credit from the Fannie Mae Foundation and for a list of lenders and credit counselors.
For the first look at what's happening in your world.
From wherever the story is happening. When you need to know how it all adds up.
It's the human side of human events.
It's the people you'll be talking about tomorrow, tonight.
For a different way of looking at the story.
Every day, every night,
everywhere.
You can depend
on CNN.
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 You can depend on CNN.
A rare northeastern earthquake rocked upstate New York this morning. The magnitude 5.1 quake was centered under Jay, New York. That's a small town 15 miles southwest of Plattsburgh. Tremors were reported as far away as Baltimore and Cleveland. The Jay, however, saw the most damage, as you can see from this video. People there reported broken windows all over town. We're going to go now to CNN's Orlin Sidney, who's not only chasing her identity these days, but a few tornadoes tonight.
That's right. Good news for you if you're in Oklahoma. You've been under a tornado watch since about mid-afternoon, and now this tornado watch has been canceled. The bad news is back in West Texas in the Panhandle, you still have a severe thunderstorm watch that is in effect from Lubbock up into the extreme southwestern portions of Oklahoma. That's until 11 o'clock local time tonight. Here's the deal. You've got a subtropical jet bringing in lots of moisture and warmth aloft. I'll show you what that means. It means some good news for those of you who are worried about severe weather, some bad news for those of you worried about this area of low pressure. This low has been kicking out disturbances that get caught up in the subtropical flow and then move across the southern plains. That's why we assumed earlier today that we might have a risk of tornadoes, but the subtropical jet also brought some warm air aloft, and that kept off the atmosphere, kept the tornado threat to just about nil now across Oklahoma. But again, still a chance of severe thunderstorms across Texas. This low now should start ejecting out to the east as we go through the night, and that means a continuation of a risk of severe thunderstorms into Sunday morning. At least a slight risk now, with mainly looking at large hail, the big threat. As we go into tomorrow, though, that snowfall is going to head into the Midwest. Look at the temperatures. They're in the 30s back at Pueblo. Contrast to the 60s and 70s to the south. Those two air masses coming together mean some pretty good thunderstorms. We've seen those around Springfield, St. Louis, and even Kansas City. But in the Rockies, it's been snowing. Not a big problem for those folks, but remember, as that low ejects off to the east, it's going to start impacting places like Des Moines. We have winter storm warnings in effect just to the north of Des Moines. Sioux Falls tomorrow could get up to 5 inches of new snow. Be careful if you have to travel. Catherine?
All right, Arlen, have a great weekend.
You too.
In Portland, Oregon, the bride wore white, the groom dressed here in gray. They took to the skies Friday before taking the plunge together, falling thousands of feet before touching down safely. There they go. And when it was over, they were joined in marital bliss. They are crazy. Congratulations to the couple. That's all the time we have for now. We'll be back after the break with the headlines. Stay with us.
A legend reborn. Cadillac CTS. Breakthrough.
Whether
Kumho's always ready for the unexpected. Design technology, Kumho.
So you want to let me go? Fine. Okay, fine. Now let's let go some things of yours. How about accounts receivable for the past 2 years? Let go. Payroll, let go. My below average employment history. Terminated! Terminated.
Because there's a different threat every day, you need more than firewalls and antivirus. You need internet security systems.
It's tough to see things clearly these days. The situation in the world, our economy, your investments. But investing is the job at Janus, and Janus is working to spot opportunities, using the approach that's worked long-term, applying lessons from the recent past, investing in companies that show signs they can perform in this economy, and into the next. Get there. Janus.
Robert Blake shot Bonnie Baker.
CNN was there first when actor Robert Blake was arrested. Now CNN takes an in-depth look at the man in the center of a Hollywood homicide. Only on People in the News, Sunday, 8 Eastern on CNN.
I'm Catherine Calloway, and Capitol Gang is coming up after we check the top stories this hour. Israeli forces have begun pulling out of two major West Bank towns, Nablus and Ramallah. The scaling back comes 3 weeks into Israel's military offensive. Sources say Israeli forces will stay in the area surrounding Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat's Ramallah compound. And earlier today, a suicide bomber blew himself up near an Israeli military checkpoint in the West Bank. No one else was injured. The Israeli Defense Force said that the man was asked to stop as he approached the checkpoint, and instead, he detonated the explosives in what's called a suicide belt. Just days before his meeting with U.S. Cardinals, Pope John Paul II is sending a strong message about celibacy. Today, the Pope said that priests must respect the requirement and bishops must take action against scandalous behavior. Next week's summit comes amid the widening sex abuse scandal plaguing America's Catholic clergy. I'm Catherine Calloway, and now Capitol Gang.
From Washington, the Capitol Gang.
Welcome to Capitol Gang. I'm Mark Shields with a full Capitol Gang. Al Hunt, Robert Novak, Kate O'Byrne, and Margaret Carlson. Secretary of State Colin Powell completed his visit to the Middle East without achieving a ceasefire in his final meetings with Palestinian Authority Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon.
Is this acceptable? That I can't go outside from this door? Is this acceptable? Do you think this will not reflect in the whole
Sir, what did Powell
stability and the peace in the Middle East?
I believe that we may reach peace. I will make every effort to reach peace. I'm ready to make painful concessions for genuine, durable, true peace.
Returning to Washington, Secretary Powell met with President Bush.
Pleased that the Israeli government is now continuing the withdrawal. I hope it will be accelerated, and we will bring that to an end as quickly as possible.
I do believe Ariel Sharon is a man of peace. I think he wants, I'm confident he wants Israel to be able to exist at peace with its neighbor.
That presidential optimism evoked a bitter Palestinian response.
I believe President Bush is rewarding Sharon's terror. He's rewarding Sharon for the massacre he committed in Jenin refugee camp.
Al Hunt, is President Bush right when he says that Prime Minister Ariel Sharon is truly a man of peace?
It's about as credible saying Arafat is Gandhi, Mark. Look, the Bush administration's performance in the Middle East the last month has been a fiasco. The Cheney trip, the Pal trip, the president who throws down a marker and then flinches when it's tossed back at him. I think the Powell trip, why it was such a failure, is interesting to look at. It tells you something about the problems. It may be that Secretary Powell, for all of his enormous popularity, doesn't have the negotiating skills of a George Mitchell, of a Henry Kissinger, of a Dick Holbrooke. But there are also sources on Capitol Hill tell me that the Israelis had back channels to people in this administration that undercut the secretary. And I think the president's policy, or lack of a policy, it changes daily. I think that makes it very difficult for any Secretary of State.
Bob Novak, picking up on something that Al said, and that is the strongest quality that people admire most in George W. Bush in the Wall Street Journal NBC poll: says what he means what he says. It's never been the mastery of information or his encyclopedic knowledge about the history of places. This is a straight shooter, a guy that gives it to you with no baloney. There was a lot of baloney this week.
He has run into a situation that is very difficult for a president. I'm glad Al doesn't have to cope with anything like that. Of course, Al isn't president of the United States, thank God, and George W. Bush is. And what his situation is he has his party, people in his administration, want a brutal Israeli policy. They like the man of war, which Sharon is, and the president knows that this cannot be the way the United States goes, and he's torn. And he hasn't done a very good job. I think it is unfair to say that Colin Powell's not a good negotiator when he hasn't had 100% support from the White House, when he has had very little time, and when the situation of has no weapons to put a heavy arm on Sharon and say, get out right now. So it's been a very difficult situation, and I think we look very bad in the world.
Margaret Carlson, how do we look in the world? How do we look to you?
The situation was too far down the road for Secretary Powell, for anybody to be successful in those few days in the Middle East. So in fairness to him, I don't think we can put him on the hook for this. And in fact, the right wing of the Republican Party is currently acting as Secretary of State and influencing Bush. If he'd really meant what he said, he'd be furious that the United States had a thumb stuck in their eye by Arafat. He obviously, in his heart, didn't really. I mean, by Sharon.
You were right.
He obviously.
You were right. Don't let him correct you.
He obviously didn't really mean it.
Well, was always missing, Kate, in the president's policy was, I want an immediate withdrawal, and there was no or. I mean, his father had stopped the money for settlements in 1991, incurred a lot of wrath, a lot of conservative criticism, a lot of Jewish enmity for it.
This president recognizes, though, Israel's right to defend itself from terrorism. It's a fight he himself is waging on our behalf. He detoured, owing to European criticism and criticism from the so-called Arab moderate states, from the Bush Doctrine. I think this week, following the Colin Powell visit, he is back on course at a speech he gave at VMI this week. Of course, he's back talking about states. You're either with us in our war against terrorism. This week, Dick Cheney called Israel a full partner in our war on terrorism when he was over to the Israeli embassy, or you're not with us, and he called the Taliban the first regime to fall in our war on terrorism, implying there'll be others. I think he's reorienting back to Iraq, which remains a central challenge and problem and threat to us. And he is now fully rejecting any linkage between not being able to do anything about the mortal threat Iraq poses to us until we've, quote, brought peace to the Middle East, which, of course, we won't be able to do.
Kate made a very important point there, and that is the position taken by the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, by her magazine, National Review, by many people in the administration, which is that we should not get involved in this peace process in the Middle East. We should let the superior force of the Israelis pound down the Palestinians, put in puppets if necessary. Don't worry about atrocities they commit, and that we should instead go ahead to Iraq and make a military operation there. That is a very strong position, and it has support in the administration. I don't think it is I know it's not Secretary Powell's position. I don't think it's really the president's ultimate position to say that we are just going to turn our back on the Israeli Palestinian peacemaking process and become the war-making nation of the Middle East.
Mark, very quickly, it's also not the position of those that Bob cited. The recognition it has to be that Israel is fighting a war against terrorism. Once they are successful in their war against terrorism, then they can talk peace. They tried the other way with respect to land for peace and negotiating for peace. And of course, since Arafat doesn't want peace with Israel, that's impossible. And it's an appreciation, Bob, that this is bigger than Arafat. Syria and Iran have a role to play here.
Kate, I don't know how you can be so supportive of the president given his record over the last month. If this were Bill Clinton and Al Gore and Madeleine Albright, instead of George Bush and Dick Cheney and Colin Powell, in the exact same circumstances, they behaved exactly the same, I think you would be talking about amateur hour in foreign policy, putting politics first, and if everything was the same, and I don't think you can just excuse George Bush
No, I
so
called
easily.
it a detour. I thought the policy was deteriorating into incoherence. This administration is very good to correct mistakes, and I think we saw this one quickly corrected.
But you don't want to correct it by calling Sharon a man of peace. If you're going to say who's the worst terrorist, yes, it's Arafat. But that does not make Sharon a man of peace. Right. He does not want peace. And for Bush to come out and call him that, the Israelis do.
Well,
the problem is that the leaders of both countries, of neither country, want peace.
And Arafat, the Palestinian negotiator, is quite right that the president has ended up, I don't think that was his intention, he's ended up rewarding the militarism of Sharon. One thing I would like to separate myself from some of the people who are attacking Bush, and even some of the people at this table. I really hope that Bush succeeds.
So do I.
I really
so do we all.
Let me ask a question though. But this is an administration that even its severest critics have acknowledged had iron discipline. It spoke with one voice on virtually everything. And boy, in this one, I mean, you get Cheney saying one thing, you get the Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz crowd, and they had to, let's go to Iraq. And then you've got Colin Powell and the State Department and other and apparently Condi Rice saying let's negotiate and let's try and move. I mean, isn't this really a certain incoherence?
Well, that's the word that people like to use is incoherence. But I'll tell you what gets to me a little bit is that a lot of people want to use this as people who have been attacking George W. Bush since the Florida recount want to use this as an attack on Bush. And I don't believe that is the problem. I think this is a tragedy that's occurring in the Middle East, and I certainly feel very badly about people engaging in cheap politics.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Just as I think when Bill Clinton made huge foreign policy mistakes in Somalia and elsewhere, I don't think people would use that. I would hope people wouldn't have used that to take cheap shots against the president, but say we hope America would right itself.
Good point, Al. Good point. And let's just check the record on that, Bob. The Gang of Five will be back with a disaster for oil drillers.
Brown loves the chase. Brown tells me exactly when our customers receive their shipments. Brown tracks down the names, and that lets me bill faster. Brown helps me shake the money tree. Brown makes my job kind of fun, in a dead serious sort of way.
Get paid faster. What can Brown do for you?
The things that I can play, a more intellectual guy because of the way I look, and a low life because of the way I am. I get to live with those characters and bring them to life, and I control the reality.
TCM explores life, love, death, and sex with Woody Allen, A Life in Film. A candid documentary premiering May 4th at 8 p.m. along with 18 of his films. Saturday nights in May, all completely commercial-free. Only on Turner Classic Movies.
1, 2, 3, third ball!
Meet 3 college-bound teams.
I had no social life to speak of at all.
In a high-stakes challenge.
I was just stressed. I was getting headaches and neck aches.
For academic excellence.
I wouldn't have worked this hard if I didn't really want to go to a good school.
Follow these high school seniors through the fierce competition and get an inside look at what it takes to make the grades with Kids Under Pressure. An all-new CNN Presents, hosted by Aaron Brown. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific on CNN.
Wrestling's megastar, The Rock, with an inside look at his new movie and his dramatic climb to the top of one of America's most controversial sports. Tonight, 12 a.m. Eastern on Larry King Weekend. You can depend on CNN.
Welcome back. President Bush's proposal to drill for oil in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge suffered an overwhelming defeat in the Senate. failing to get even a simple majority, much less than the 60 votes needed to end debate.
Dealing with the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is an issue that our caucus cares deeply about. It's virtually unanimous in opposition to drilling.
Going away from this vote with a realization that this issue is not over. Sooner or later, this nation's going to open up ANWR, and I think world affairs will dictate when that will occur.
Bob Novak, we all want America to do well, but why did President Bush lose so badly on this issue?
That is extraordinary, since all the arguments are on the president's side there. It's hard to imagine how anybody can say we shouldn't have a new supply of oil to more than match the Iraqi supply for the sake of a few caribou. I don't even know what a caribou looks like. But the simple reason is that the president didn't work very hard at it. There was not an effort. He didn't go to the country. He didn't go to the people and say this is an important thing for national security and the economy. But the other point is that the environmentalist lobby is really terrific. They intimidate these cheap and panty-waist Republicans with the telegrams from the garden clubs, and they scare the hell out of them, and they trump the labor movement. They beat the hell out of the labor movement in a environmentalist versus labor union head-on confrontation.
What has happened, Margaret, what's happened to America when the Birkenstocks and the backpackers intimidate big oil and the Teamsters?
I know. And then Bob calls them panty waists. Yeah. I'd say they're pretty darn powerful.
I said
they're not
panty-waist Republicans. Panty-waist Republicans.
True.
You got to
okay.
listen carefully.
I agree with you there. Listen, the reason Bush didn't go to the country on this is because it doesn't provide a fraction of the answer to our energy needs. And you have a vice president who sneered at conservationists it's a matter of personal virtue, and he sniffs at this idea. And then he holds himself up with energy guys, and none of these so-called environmentalists who are so powerful they can't get into the White House for a meeting. And then you come out and, why would people vote for something that is not going to provide, a fraction of the oil that we need? And, the polls said, okay, Americans want to keep their SUVs, so the Senate votes against the fuel conservation standards, which would provide, eons more of oil than drilling in the Arctic. But they also said they don't want them drilling in the Arctic, so they kill those standards and they vote against the Arctic. So we're left with nothing.
No energy policy. Kate.
The native Alaskans most directly affected if you were permitted to drill in this godforsaken, in total darkness half the year, 50-degree below zero wilderness. They favored it. And some of the unions favored it. There are some estimates that it could lead to as many as 500,000 jobs. So I'm also struck by the fact, except you did split the unions, and they even tried to make a sweetheart deal with the steel unions. It was silly. Yeah. But what was critically important, I think, of what it says about the Democratic Party this vote is that despite their cash and their troops, the unions, they are now trumped by a bunch of elite environmentalists who, of course, will never come within 1,000 miles of ANWR and don't much care about jobs. But you know what they will do? They'll put up candidates against incumbent Democrats. And that's why the environmentalists are scaring Democrats so much nowadays. Witness Ralph Nader.
Now, the Republicans didn't get a majority. They were supposed to get a majority.
Mark, for months and years, I've been hearing that the Democratic Party is under the thumb of big labor. The labor goons control them, and now we find out the Garden Club can trump the labor goons.
It's a shock.
It really is. I'm glad you have told me. Look, the fact of the matter is, on the substance, there wouldn't be a drop of oil out of the Arctic for 10 years. If you really wanted to supplant that, that Iraqi oil, you can do conservation measures. It'll do it right away, or at least in 2 or 3 years. On the politics, Mark, I think both sides curiously got something out of it. I think the Democrats energized their environmental base, which is important, and the Republicans, I think, achieved something by reaching out to the Teamsters and the building trades and some other labor unions. So I think politically it was washed. I think the steel deal they tried to cut, which was silly from the minute they tried it, and it really showed a desperation tactic.
There's also an SUV lobby. Like if you go against the SUV, you're against children and moms in their cars.
Made that point. Yeah. I just say that there were 3 senators who were consistent in the whole thing, who talked about an energy policy. The 2 senators from Hawaii, Akaka and Inouye, both voted for drilling in ANWR and for CAFE, the toughest standards on mileage, and so did Judd Gregg of New Hampshire. So I mean, it's kind
It
of
was the only
kind of
intellectual
interesting.
consistency.
That was the intellectual consistency.
That
3
was
out of
it.
100 ain't
Let me
bad.
add one small thing, that it wasn't just the Democrats who were frightened of this. These Republicans, safe Republicans, they get a few telegrams from environmentalists and they wring their hands.
Yeah.
Goons are gone, right, Bob?
The next they'll be wearing those Birkenstock.
Bob, next on Capital Gang, a summons from Rome. For you.
Engineer Tom Sutter is a student of tranquility. For the GMC Envoy, he and his team use hydroform technology to absorb vibrations for a surprisingly comfortable ride. They also gave it 270 horsepower. They want you to feel relaxed, not fall asleep. Motor Trend's 2002 SUV of the year, the GMC Envoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the main event. A heavyweight rumble going toe-to-toe on the issues. On the reigning right, the Prince of Darkness, Bob Novak, and bow-tie brawler, Tucker Carlson, take on their new opponents, the left-leaning powerhouse duo of Longhorn lefty Paul Tagala and Raging Cajun Dave Carvin. New blood, no gloves, mixing it up live on the all-new Crossfire. See it in weeknights, 70.
The newsmakers are talking to Larry King on Larry King Live. Every weeknight at 9 Eastern, you can depend on CNN.
Wix has a fabulous selection of name brands.
Lazy Boy!
I've been around big names before, but nothing like this.
It's Wix Furniture's big 4-day savings spectacular, featuring Wix fabulous new Lazy Boy collection. Great prices on Lazy Boy sofas, sleepers, and recliners. Plus, no money down, with no monthly payments and no finance charges due for 1 year with a Wix charge.
Wix Furniture can make anyone sexy. Not that I need it.
The game is just a game. It's how you play that makes it fun, or frustrating, or dangerous. It's true for handball, and it's true for gambling. 3% of Oregonians have a gambling problem. When they play, it's more than a game, it's an obsession. If you can't stop playing and call 1-877-2-STOP-NOW or log on to OregonLotteryHelp.org. Treatment is free, confidential, and it works.
This is CNN.
Welcome back. Pope John Paul II summoned 8 American cardinal archbishops to Rome to discuss the crisis over sexual abuse by Roman Catholic priests. Today, the Pope issued a message saying, quote, "The value of celibacy as a complete gift of self to the Lord and His Church must be carefully safeguarded." End of quote.
We can talk about the Church throughout the country and hopefully come up with some ideas which will be the beginning of a policy and a program which will guarantee our people that these things, as much as you can, being human beings, that this will not continue and will not happen again.
Will those discussions include celibacy?
I think that issue, that topic, really needs to be discussed, but I think it is not linked intrinsically to this problem. Celibacy of itself is not the issue. What the issue is what is the maturity, psychosexual maturity of people working in the church?
Margaret Carlson, what will come out of the Rome meeting next week?
I think it will take a miracle for much to come out of it. At least they're in the right setting for it in Rome, for one to occur. The people coming are ones that have been chosen by the Pope in his own image. I mean, they tend to be conservative. They're not Vatican II, post-Vatican II types. Celibacy has been taken off the table. The ordination of women, I'm sure, may not even come up. And it's the institution that's at fault. Not so much, I mean, the sinners should be forgiven, but the church using its power to cover up what are crimes, by moving these priests around, it just goes right to the heart of, the Vatican being an institution and an establishment that looks like corporate America in all its worst excesses.
Kate O'Byrne.
Mark, some of my fellow Catholics, more liberal, the more liberal among them, have long wanted to see married priests and women priests, and they're using this scandal to promote that agenda. This scandal has nothing to do with either issue. I haven't seen any argument that women priests would somehow have prevented this, and I certainly don't understand an argument that says a man who's inclined to abuse teenage boys wouldn't be doing so if he were married. Celibacy, of course, is not a doctrine of the church. It's just a century-old tradition. Surveys show priests consider it a gift, much as the Holy Father said. 75% wouldn't get married even if they could. Unlikely to change. And of course, women priest is as old as the church. Male priest who was ordained by Christ and unrelated to the current scandal. And also, the Pope himself has said, I couldn't change it if I wanted to, and there's no indication he wants to.
Let me just take a quick exception on the women. Ephebophilia, which is the disorder, which is the attraction of a male adult to a young male child, a boy going through puberty. There's not a counterpart, the same way on the women's side. That disorder.
So women wouldn't be, well, first of all, as I said, it can't be changed because it's church doctrine. So women, if they were ordained, wouldn't be abusing, but the guy in the parish over might still be if we don't tackle the problem,
But Mark,
which is 80% of these.
Wait, now, let me just say to Kate, the psychosexual maturity, however, of the church with Father Mahoney was interested in would be raised considerably by allowing women into the priesthood.
Married men are the largest heterosexual men abusers of children.
As a Catholic convert of just a few years ago,
Bob.
Welcome.
I've been puzzled by the anger about this by so many of my fellow Catholics, and it is. I've been puzzled because it seems to be a very limited a problem. Did the church handle it well? No, they didn't handle it well. But I think they've seen the error of their ways and the way they've handled these abuses. Most of them are well in the past. But it suddenly has occurred to me just within the last week that there's just a lot of Catholics who, I'm not going to question their faith, but they really don't like the Catholic Church. And I think this is just an occasion for these Catholics to demonstrate, to pound their fists, to beat their breasts, to say that the Cardinals are like U.S. Steel. And I love the Church. And I like the way it operates, but I just find a lot of my Catholics don't like the church, and this is just an excuse for a lot of this nastiness to come out.
I like the church, Bob. The church, the parish school made me who I am today, and I love the church. But I don't think you can accuse people who think this has been handled badly.
Cardinal Mahoney loves the church, and I think people like Father McBrien at Notre Dame love the church. Some of the traditionalists told us in the beginning this was a uniquely American problem, that it wasn't systemic, and that it was media spawn. Well, it's not uniquely American. It's happening, around the world. It is systemic, and it is systemic. The problem, it is. But the
way
problem,
it was handled was systemic.
Let me just say, the problem is that the Catholic Church faces a huge supply and demand situation. There aren't enough priests. And that's just a matter. I'm sorry, there are not, Bob. And I think if you talk to anyone who looks at it, they will tell you. There's a man out in Seattle who studies this, Mr. Harris, who says for every 2 that retire, you bring in 1, and that's just a fact of life. I don't know how you sustain your religion very much longer. And the notion is media spawn. We did a poll, Mark. 71% of devout Catholics, I mean people who go to church regularly, 71% favor married priests. Ultimately, not under this Pope, ultimately that's where the church is.
Just a minute, one thing I'm very happy of, that I've got an organization that doesn't run by polls.
Well, let me just say one thing, Bob. You've held yourself up as some sort of a plaster saint.
No,
someone who loves the church. You certainly did. You're saying people who are critical don't love the church the same way you do. If you love an institution and love what it's done and its values and what it stood for, and you see it under siege as it is by what it's done to itself, then if you really care about it, you say it with care and commitment and criticism and passion.
But you also defended from charges that aren't true. We have 48,000 priests in America, and a relative handful have been accused of this.
But
that's
what was
not
systemic was the cover-up.
No,
the cover-up was.
There has not been a scandal, and most dioceses has had no scandal.
The cover-up is unacceptable, and it is indefensible, and secrecy is the killer.
And you had twice as many priests to know.
That's the last word. We'll be back with the Capital Gang Classic, the Oklahoma City tragedy, 7 years ago this week.